And so next up is, as I alluded to, King Cobra from 1999. It's just one of those shitty snake movies in which like this mutated snake escapes from a laboratory, and then like what 2-3 years later, it wreaks havoc in a small California town during the time about to have like a big bear fast type thing. The movie itself is decently unremarkable. There's some big names in the movie. Well, the moderately big names in the movie. Pat Morita from Karate Kid. Hoyt Axton, who was in Gremlins. He played the father. And then Courtney Gaines from Children of the Corn, who played Malachi.
Good to see that his career took off. One scene in a shitty snake movie, but anyway.
Hey, I thought his character was a lot of fun, but yeah, he only just appeared at the beginning, but even so, it was sort of nice seeing him. So, the movie's not great, but I personally think this movie has a bit of charm, if only because this is before like the huge CGI push into movies. Like, you watch any random sci-fi snake movie, it's probably going to be worse than this one is, in my opinion. Even though the effects here didn't look good, great, they look pretty horrible, but I think there's a bit more charm here though than in a lot of more modern day movies that might use the same type of plot. But this may be a point of dispute. So, what were your thoughts on this one?
I remember seeing at least some of this movie back not long after it was released, like on TV. I remember some of the like Pat Morita scenes, so it's not exactly a first time watch for me, but I think this is the first time I watched it from start to finish. I mean, you summed it up pretty well. It's a shitty snake movie.
Yeah.
You know, it's got that sci-fi channel movie type of feel, I guess. Yeah, I think especially in the first half of the movie, there's a lot of like snake attack scenes, where you see people. Like, they don't even really show the snake. They kind of show the camera creeping up on someone. You hear a big noise. And I mean, those types of scenes always feel really lame and cheap. Yeah. I mean, the second half, they show the snake quite a lot. So, I mean, it's not like... I don't know if they just felt they were being artsy with the movie, you know, showing less of the creature in a less is more type of way, but I'm telling you right now, it's less. Less is less in this instance. Probably the one positive, even though the snake still looked kind of silly, they still seem to use a lot more practical effects. Like, I mean, it's not like a complete CGI crap fest like other films that we'd typically see where you've got like some sort of monster snake or whatever type of creature. So I kind of appreciated that it was a little more practical in that sense. But yeah, it still doesn't look great. It's a shitty movie.
Yeah, I think no, I have seen this one before. Let's say somewhere between 6 to 18 years ago, I saw this movie. I was much younger back then, and you know, it's a terrible movie, but I had a fun time with it. And I suspect some of that, I guess, I wouldn't necessarily call it nostalgia because I saw this movie, you know, when I was a young teenager. But I find the movie terrible, but in an odd way, I find myself enjoying it. Like the ending, you know, it's just sort of silly. You're trying to capture the snake in this tube, and I actually do like the last scene. You know, where it goes in its sleeping gas, and then you hear his scene. It's a terrible ending, but it's so funny. But I find this movie a bad movie, but not necessarily like I don't think it's like the worst of the 90s, and that's certainly maybe a little different perception than what some people might say about this one.
Yeah, that one scene where the snake and Pat Morita, like they've got them kind of face to face, both in the camera. I was just like, he should have like crane kicked him or something.
Yeah, unfortunately. Now, the snake did get kicked once, but unfortunately it wasn't by that character. Talk about a major disappointment, by the way.
I mean, to me, the movie would have been a whole lot more enjoyable if it was like Pat Morita's teaching the snake karate to get back at some other snakes who have been picking on him, or
that is a wild plot, and somebody may pick up on that.
Teach it some wax on, wax off. Yeah, I guess the only other thing that I really mention about the movie is that, and you'll probably appreciate this comment, but I think back at other movies that have, animal-type creatures as killers, like, let's take one of your favorites, Arachnophobia. I think the good thing about that movie is that the spiders are somewhat believable, like, they're a little more realistic in terms of the size and things like that. Like, even the bigger ones, the queen and stuff at the end, I mean, they're pretty massive, but still, I guess, somewhat within the realm of being realistic. And there's a whole lot of other really small spiders in the movie, and they're all quite deadly. And I find that a lot scarier than just some, kind of monsterish version of an animal. It just seems so silly to look at.
I think that's where a lot of the modern day sci-fi movies go wrong.
Yeah, bigger is not always better.
Especially if it's done with hideous CGI.
I mean, if they had like just a kind of more of a normal sized snake or multiple normal sized snakes, that to me that would be scarier. I mean, I live in a country where snakes are quite common. The second most deadly snake in the world is a very common snake that you see in Australia. So, I mean, even my dad's been bitten by one. So, I don't need a snake to be fucking 5 times the size of a human to be scary.
Like a snakezilla.
Snakes are scary enough just in their own little form. And then just like the stats that Pat Morita gave in the movie, where they kill more than anything else on the planet. So
yeah, I thought I'm not sure if that's probably true, but I did like the little speech type thing.
Yeah, I mean that the speech made snakes seem more scarier than actually seeing this big snake on the screen.
Speaking of seeing the snake on the screen, I did like the kill where the guy sees a reflection of the snake off his television screen. Probably, aside from any Morita scene, that's probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie. And it's not like a great scene, but I think it's sort of funny. Yeah, I'm probably going to, I'm not going to say surprise people, but I'm going to give this one a rating that people might think is a bit much. I'm going to give this one a 6.5. I'm going to lower that down to a 6 out of 10, so it's still a below average rating. But as stupid as some of this movie is, I just can't help but compare it to more modern day, killer animal movies. Let's look at, grab a random sci-fi movie, and this is probably going to be, at least they tried more on this one. There's some nice faces to see. I mean, we've talked a lot about Morita, but I really did like seeing Axton here too. So I think there's enough going here that entertained me, and even though some of the stuff is just ridiculous, like the one couple who was playing like hide and seek, that scene I'm not too convinced on, but I enjoyed this movie enough to give it a 6 out of 10, so there you go.
You should be drug tested.
I probably should be, but I might fail.
I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. I actually think the IMDb rating is a little harsh. I think it's got like a 3 out of 10, maybe 3.1, but I don't think it's quite that bad. But yeah, it's still pretty silly. Once again, it's a shitty snake movie. The practical effects are appreciated. I'd still prefer to see that over CGI, like we see in most of these other similar type of movies, but it was still pretty stupid.
out of interest, this is a movie that came out the following year called Python. I was wondering if you've seen that, if you've seen anything about that one.
I do recall the poster for it. I can't remember if I've watched any of it, or maybe I've seen parts of it. I don't really go out of my way to watch a lot of these silly, monsterish animal type movies. Maybe some of the older ones from 80s and stuff, but anything from near 2000s and beyond, I always think of movies, like Sharknado or I mean, I did see a movie that I quite enjoyed a while back when it first came out was Deep Rising, which I mentioned to you at some point. And originally watching it on a very small TV, because back in the day, big TVs weren't really a thing. So I was watching it on a small TV. You don't really notice the CGI as much as you do now with HD and 55-inch TVs and higher. So now it kind of, even though the movie's still somewhat enjoyable, it kind of looks a lot shittier. So anything that has CGI like that, it just almost completely takes me out of the movie. So I don't go searching for those type of movies.
Well, if you ever do see Python, just know that it has Robert Englund, and maybe that's will make you more likely to enjoy it.